subplot. But there's the captain, and he's like an alcoholic, and it's like, I don't know. That was, of all the things that felt a little long, this part did. But for the Civil War, I forget I'm talking to two non-Americans here. This is obviously it's a defining part of our history, and the many essays and books and speeches have been made about what it was really about, right?
And it still seems to be happening on Twitter,
right? Yes, it's very true, very true. But ultimately, it came down to money, right? I mean, people say it's about slaves, but slaves were the backbone of the economic structure of the South. So again, money, right? And you can talk about, and it's great that we freed the slaves. Obviously, that was a huge part, like the moral part of it was a huge factor. But what pushes people over the edge, as usual, is their wallet, right? So I mean and that affected the South's livelihood, and that's what the North and all that. So I mean, this is not the Civil War podcast here, but I think it was presented quite eloquently. I don't think they ever. And, Tom, on the Twilight Zone, sometimes there's some kind of finicky stuff about, like, the South, they were good men, too. And I'm like, I don't know about these. These episodes are kind of like, do we need to romanticize the South? No. I don't think they did too much of that here. I just think they showed kind of, like, the horror of war and how, people are getting mixed up in something bigger than themselves. And they're, you look around and young people, old people, all alike, they're suffering, they're getting blown away. What is all this for? And I think that's more of a universal theme about war than speaking to the fact of, like, the romanticization of the Civil War. I don't think that's being done here. And that's why I really appreciated the moments they took to kind of, like, pay the respect it was due.
And as a person who doesn't understand that really, like, visually the difference, I know one's blue and one's gray. I don't know which side stood for which, and that's fine. I don't believe that that's important to this movie at all. They're not choosing sides. It's just a war that's going on that's getting in the way of this guy's mission to dig up a grave, right? And one of the greatest parts of the movie to me that I loved was the fact that they were wearing the gray.
Yeah.
And then they're like, oh, like whatever it is. I might say it wrong. Generally, he's the greatest, blah, blah, blah. I love him. And then they're like, oh, dear, no, they're just dirty. I thought that was a really cool reveal.
That's a great reveal. He just does
I think
his
it was really awesome. It just starts patting it off and they're blue underneath. That was really awesome. So I thought that was pretty cool. And it was interesting because then it takes them in a complete, this is like the gear shift movie of all gear shifts. In that they're constantly changing what's going on. And it is interesting. It is really interesting. And every subplot is interesting. There's really cool stuff going on in every scene of this movie. It's wonderful.
Well, we talk about intermissions. We talk about long movies. You look at, I mean, it's interesting. We've been doing this series when The Mandalorian has come out, the Disney Plus show. And because they're obviously bounty hunters, right? There's similar elements there. Star Wars is like the West meets the East, and that's what kind of this is because it's a cowboy movie based off a samurai movie, so that you can draw comparisons. But like you think about this movie, and you could really cut it up into like a mini series of like 30-minute episodes, right?
I'm like, you know what? Like, if they even expanded this would be a great 8-hour miniseries. They could even expand it.
Right, because you have the episode where they're in the mission, the episode where they're in the prisoner of war camp, the episode where they're in the Civil War battle, like, and you could split those up and I'm shocked if they ever remake this, like, in some fashion, an HBO limited series, The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, right? They would just split it up into, as you said, some 8-part miniseries, and you could even probably, if you slice it up, there are little sections, little mini adventures inside the greater adventure. But I think that length is what makes the payoff all that better, I think. So that's why the length doesn't bother me. I think being on this journey, because you kind of see Tuco and Blondie, they bond, and you think, oh, they're friends now. But like, no, they're not. They're still bounty hunters. They're still looking out for their own best interests. So you're never really sure where they stand. And then ultimately at the end, right, I was like, okay, well, obviously they're going to kill Angel Eyes. But when it comes down to these two guys, what's going to happen? And I'm like, sitting at the guy, I'd never seen this before, and I was like, man, is Clint Eastwood just going to let this guy hang? That's brutal. But then I think about, I don't know, they made him march through the desert and get all like these sun blisters, and he was laughing that he was dehydrating, he was going to leave him for dead. Like, he was pretty bad to him. So But because he was bad to Tuco at first. Yeah. Tuco only did that because he did that to Tuco. Right. That's what you got to remember. It's because it was like 3 hours ago, so you forget. But it's like, I don't know, but did you, Brandon, having not seen this before, did you think he might let Tuco hang at the end? Because I was like, oh, man, this is hardcore. I don't know what's going to happen.
I kind of saw it coming because of how the movie started with the shooting of the rope. I'm like, hey, he's just going to shoot him down.
Yeah.
right? So
But-
I kind of saw that coming.
I thought in the back of my head though, I thought this could end either way, and I would respect
it. Could, yeah.
Right?
But I was pretty sure they were going to go with him shooting the rope. So
the way I see it is, and I hate to go on, but Sergio Leone, he had a reputation, and some people have said that his movies were about complicated male friendships, and I think we can see that here because when Tuco went to see his brother and they had this confrontation, and Tuco comes out and he's all like, "Oh yeah, my brother's a great guy. It's nice to know that I've got somewhere where I can go and have a good meal whenever I need to." And he's completely just lying to make himself feel better and to save face. And, Clint Eastwood, Blondie gets this and he says, "There's nothing like a good cigar after a meal." And he hands him, and it's just a moment of, Blondie knows he's lying, and it's just to make him feel better. And then they sort of bond over the whole Civil War part of it, which is another theme of the movie that, violence and war, it's just pointless. They're arguing over a bridge, and when you boil it down to that, people are dying every day because of this. So they do bond, and Blondie sort of takes Tuco's bullets out of the gun in the final confrontation and so on. But I just think it's a bond that, yes, they do bond to a degree, but Blondie knows that if he leaves Tuco there, Tuco's going to be all right because he's just that kind of guy. But if they stay together as a partnership, they're never going to be best buds because there's always going to be something where one of them will try and outdo the other. So he leaves him some money. He puts him in a position where he can get a good enough distance away from him, and then he shoots him down,
Just like old times.
kind of like Zach and my relationship. Like most of the time we're okay, but then then I leave him in the desert, and and then it's no good, and then he comes back and hangs me, and yeah.
And I think, Brandon, that when now you know what it is and what to expect, and you mentioned this before, I do think your next watch is going to be better. When,
I agree.
When you're not watching it on your iPhone.
I 100% agree. I mean, like if I have I know I could have watched this on the Monday before. But I ended up doing other stuff. It's been a bonkers couple of weeks for me, and I know that watching this on my iPad at work is not the ideal situation. But I mean, like, next time I watch this, 50 years from now, I'll like it. So.
But I would love you to experience the scene running through the graveyard. I know you said you felt it went on for a bit, but that is one of my favorite scenes in movie history. Just because of the swell of the music, the scenery is just rushing by behind him so fast, and it gives me chills
and it
every
captures
time.
the frantic, like he's running around trying to find this grave, like you feel like you're him just running around, your head spinning. Like I enjoyed that as well. These creative flourishes that pop up in all three of these films, right?
And the music is amazing.
Yeah, see, I love that because I didn't expect. I didn't expect the graveyard to be that big. So, like, what I was actually picturing was, I was actually picturing it was going to be like the graveyard in the first one, right? Like small. And I'm like, well, can't they just dig them all up? And so when we got there and saw how big this grave was, I was like, oh wow, okay. That's awesome. That's beautiful. It's really neat that it's in this weird circular shape. Right, I would like that's where the aliens land. Clearly, right? It's like a big spot for that. But so when he's running around, I'm getting that, and I'm like, man, nobody could do this on their own. He needs to know where that money is. Yeah. So, so I love that reveal too. I thought that was really cool. I wasn't expecting that.
Can I just ask you guys as well? Did you notice the thing where characters can't see beyond the frame of the movie?
No,
like. Well, first of all, Tuco was surprised when he saw the graveyard. He sort of tumbles into a gravestone, and it's like the graveyard is massive. They would have seen it as they approached it. And then when Tuco is digging up the grave, you could say that, yes, he's occupied, but then all of a sudden Clint Eastwood is there next to him, and it's like you would have seen him coming a mile away. Then Angel Eyes turns up. It's this big, expansive, flat cemetery. They would have seen him coming from miles away.
And I doubt the geography of the scene where they find a Bill Cunningham, eye patch guy. Is that his name?
Bill
Carson.
Carson.
Excuse me. Was Bill Cunningham? Was that the guy from Bonanza? I think it might be his name, but Bill Carson. Right, because Tuco's talking to him. He's like, all right, I'm going to get you water. Right, and he leaves, and he comes back in the water, and already Blondie is there talking to him. Like, how does the geography of this scene make any sense, right? But I understand, like, he needed to get that information, and I get how Tuco was kind of distracted. Also, earlier, when Clint Eastwood, and I was fooled by it, but again, I'm watching the movie frame, not the real life there, when he grabs that boot because he thinks it's Tuco, but it's just this empty boot. So there's a lot of instances of that. But the geography, there's so much creative stuff being done, and the story's so well told. You overlook that stuff, but it is interesting to note. You're like, there's no way. Like you said, you're on this plateau. You would see someone riding up on a horse, or at least hear them, right? So
yeah.
But
I didn't think about it, but yeah. Now the one that I did notice was the boot, and the one where Eastwood went up to underneath the thing to get the information from the dying guy at the beginning. Those are the two that I noticed. But now that you say it, I guess I kind of did think about it. But then
there's moments like which again were clever, right? Because you're like, oh, they're hearing like when Eastwood's in the hotel room and the guys are coming up to get him, but he hears the spurs. But there's so much crowd noise outside because the army's coming through and they're trying to like coordinate like we're gonna walk when only the army's walking, making noise. And so and then the guys bust in. Eastwood, he's a savvy guy. He's like, your spurs, and he kills them all. But Tuco, you're like, where is Tuco during this? He had come in through the window. I'm like, all right, geography for the win, right? So, there's enough balance of all that. You're like, okay, these guys know what they're doing. They're not just trying to pull one over on us. So, in a movie with a lot of convenience, I think we can overlook stuff like that. But I think, guys, that's a good place to leave it, unless you have any final thoughts, Tom.
No, it's been interesting hearing your thoughts on it as first-time watchers. That's always great, and I know what big movie fans you are, so I'm glad that you finally watched it, and I hope it becomes part of your kind of movie watching it in years to come. But I love it. There's not a frame of this movie that you couldn't put in a frame and hang on your wall. The soundtrack is just amazing. It is my favorite movie of all time. Hands down.
Well, I'm so glad we had you on for that because of that. Because that's what we're here. We're here to share our love of movies, and I'm looking for. I am actually looking forward to watching this again because there is a lot that I see in this movie that I do love, and while I think it was too long, I think you guys know that I don't hate this movie. Right, I don't think it's bad or anything like that. I saw a 1-star review on Letterboxd, and I'm like, I don't know how you can give this 1 star. Like, what's
cancel delete your account.
Yeah,
1 star.
But yeah, I think it's wonderful, and I think it's great that it's so heavily rated, so highly rated, and I'm so happy that I finally got to cover this blind spot in my movie history because so many people talk about these movies all the time. It's such an inspiration for Stephen King. So yes. Very grateful.
Yeah, I mean, a classic in cinema. It's one of these movies I've never seen. The reputation has built up my entire life, right? And it's really nice when you actually get around to watching one of these movies that you quote unquote should have seen already, right? That they live up to their reputation, right? I mean, The Shining is a movie I just saw for the first time a few years ago. Now it's one of my favorite movies, and I'm like, it's so great when you hear it's hyped up, and then you actually sit and watch it. You know what? I get it. This lives up to its reputation. I understand why it's one of the most highly regarded films of all time. So that's where I stand on this one. But guys, we have some business to attend to. We have our money exchange count. This one's a little complicated because I'm not sure how to count it exactly. I have my notes here. You can guess, but there's a big asterisk on all this because of the passing of time. So I don't know how we want to count it. But guys, how many times do you think money is exchanged in this film?
I don't know, because even with turning into bounties and stuff like this, I don't know, I'll say 4.
Okay.
You would think I would be counting at this point, but I completely forgot about it, so I'll just say 5. Okay.
So I have a total of 8, but
there you go.
Let's go through them and determine if I'm correct or not. So the first one is when Lee Van Cleef steals $1,000 from the guy he kills. The second is when he gets $500 from the second guy he kills. The third is when Blondie gets the $2,000 for turning in Tuco. The fourth is when Tuco gets $1,000 from Blondie because they split the bounty.